The war in the Middle East is expanding into a wider regional conflict as the U.S. and Israel bombard Iran and its allies for the third day. Iran has retaliated by targeting Israel and U.S. bases in neighboring countries. It has now been joined by Hezbollah. Overnight, the Lebanon-based militia launched cross-border attacks against Israel. The move was heavily criticized by the Lebanese government, which responded by declaring all of Hezbollah's military activities illegal. With drones and missiles flying in seemingly all directions, the conflict is threatening to spiral out of control.
A child is treated for injuries following strikes by the US and Israel. The footage is verified by the Red Crescent. As the US and Israel carried out a fresh wave of airstrikes on Monday, President Trump warned that the campaign could last for 4 or 5 weeks. In Lebanon, people sought refuge as a new front opened up in the war. Overnight, Iran-backed Hezbollah fighters launched rockets at Israel. Israel responded by striking targets in southern Lebanon and Beirut. Israel's defense minister had a warning for the leaders of Hezbollah.
Naim Qassem, chairman of the Hezbollah terrorist organization, will discover that whoever follows Khamenei's path ends up like Khamenei, at the bottom of hell, together with all of those from the axis of evil.
Washington's allies in the Gulf also came under renewed attack. In Saudi Arabia, an oil refinery went into partial shutdown after a strike by 2 drones. Oil prices surged sharply on Monday as traders took stock of the disruptions from the war. In Kuwait, 3 American fighter jets were mistakenly shot down by friendly fire during an Iranian attack. All 6 crew members were safely recovered. Smoke was also seen over the US embassy in Kuwait. Elsewhere, Iranian drones reached the British Air Force base in Cyprus. The UK has agreed to let the United States use the facility for what it calls defensive strikes on Iranian missile sites. In Israel, air raid sirens announced another round of incoming Iranian missiles. With the conflict widening, millions of people across the region remain on constant alert.
As is our correspondent Tania Krämer. She's following events for us from Jerusalem. Tania, Iran and its proxy Hezbollah have been targeting Israel. Bring us up to speed. What's the situation right now in the country?
Yeah, from what we're hearing from the Israeli military and also the chief of staff, they're fully prepared to intensify this. So Israel says its military continues striking Lebanon. The IDF spokesperson, they have also released several warnings, one in the morning to Lebanese citizens in the southern Lebanon, to over 50 villages there to leave the area, as well as across Lebanon, close to infrastructure related or affiliated with Hezbollah. Also today, obviously, Israel also continued striking Iran, especially in the heart of its capital, Tehran. So this appears to be intensifying. Here on the ground, we're hearing that Israel has mobilized over 100,000 reservists. They're not all already deployed, but they will be reinforcing the Lebanese demarcation line, the border there, also in Syria, and to say what they say, to be prepared for developments across multiple fronts, as they put it. Also, there have been launches of ballistic missiles against Israel. We had not in the intensity as we've seen that yesterday, but one of the missiles was not intercepted, and there was a direct hit in Beersheba, a city in the Negev in the south of Israel, where we have about 19 people injured.
Casualties are mounting. A synagogue was struck. People have been in and out of bomb shelters for days now, yourself included, of course. How would you describe the mood in the country right now?
Well, I think everywhere you look, it's very kind of tense, quiet, I would say, also even in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem usually in previous conflict was not really a target, but, attacks here, missile attacks have been also very, very frequent. So people, get these alarms on their phones, and then they have to go next to a shelter. So this is a bit the rhythm right now. Of course, the home front guidelines have also been extended now to Wednesday. So schools are still being closed. Only essential workplaces are allowed to be open. So most of the shops, also only the essential shops are open. So it's a very tense quiet, especially given the fact that there is a belief that this could even further intensify. And this not only affects, of course, Israel, it also does affect the occupied West Bank, also in Gaza, where the crossings have been closed. There has been also shrapnel falling from interceptions in the West Bank. So, the whole region here is affected by all of this.
That's a very important point. Tania, Krämer in Jerusalem, thank you so much for your reporting. Let's move on now to Beirut, where our correspondent Mohamad Chreyteh is following events. Israel targeted Beirut after Hezbollah launched attacks from Lebanon. Mohamad, what's the situation right now?
In Beirut, every aspect of life is feeling like war again. Streets that would be usually very busy during the day are almost deserted. Refugees who fled their homes in the south, in the Beqa, in east of Lebanon, and in the southern suburbs of Beirut have spent their night on the side roads in freezing temperatures. The Israeli military has been striking many positions in south and in the east and in the southern suburbs of Beirut. At least 31 people have been killed, according to the Lebanese health ministry, and the Israeli military claimed to have also killed the head of Hezbollah's intelligence unit in a strike on the southern suburbs of Beirut.
Lebanon very obviously does not want to be dragged into this conflict. The Lebanese government is trying to distance itself from Hezbollah and has declared the group's military activities illegal. That is quite a remarkable step. Can you explain the significance of this?
Exactly. The government is seeking to curb Israel's response and ongoing hostilities in Lebanon, while also working to protect state institutions and public infrastructure like the airport and other strategic facilities from Israeli bombardment. In practical terms, the government's designation of Hezbollah's military and security activities as illegal effectively means that the party's military wing and militants are outlaws. And according to Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, this designation was followed by clear orders to the armed forces, to the army and security forces in Lebanon to take the necessary measures, including confiscating weapons and arresting those involved in sending rockets towards Israel.
How has Hezbollah reacted to the decision?
So far, we have seen no response from Hezbollah, but local media reported that ministers who represent the party in the cabinet expressed reservation on the government's methodology and decision against Hezbollah, especially at a time when Israel is still occupying territory in Lebanon and refusing to withdraw and continues to bomb Lebanon on almost on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier that the Lebanese government has called on Hezbollah to hand over its weapons. How likely is that to happen? Because it's not the first time they're asking for Hezbollah to lay down their arms.
Yeah, the short answer is no, this is not going to happen. Hezbollah is organically connected to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. It is equipped and funded by Iran and adheres to a very strict religious ideology. Hezbollah's ideology is very, very deeply intertwined with Iran's cleric leadership. All previous attempts by the Lebanese state and other political parties to persuade Hezbollah to lay down its weapons and transition into a political party have failed since the 2024 war with Israel ended. Now that Iran itself is under attack, there is no chance that these efforts to disarm Hezbollah through peaceful means will succeed.
SDW correspondent Mohamad Chreyteh there reporting from Beirut. Thanks so much, Mohamad. The The U.S. strikes on Iran and the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei have prompted strong reactions across the world. Many exiled Iranians are celebrating what they hope could become the end of a tyrannical theocracy. Others, especially Shia Muslims, are enraged by the death of one of their most powerful religious leaders.
Death to Israel, chanted these protesters in the Iraqi city of Basra.
These are the hardest days of our lives. I swear it's a catastrophe, a calamity. I can't express how big the catastrophe is. The loss of the supreme leader has devastated us, harmed us, made us orphans.
In the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, police used tear gas to disperse protesters who tried to enter the US embassy. Fury over the death of Iran's supreme leader also in Pakistan, where dozens were killed or injured in violent protests, especially in Karachi. Outrage too across India.
Khamenei was my lion, a lion. He was a lion yesterday, and he is a lion today, and he will remain a lion until Judgment Day. If one Khamenei is killed, 1,000 Khameneis will rise.
A completely different mood among many Iranians in the US and Europe. They praised Trump's strikes and celebrated the demise of the Iranian regime. In New York,
President Trump!
We love you!
President Trump! Trump, thank you! Trump, thank you!
And in Los Angeles.
For the U.S. government, thank you, President Trump. For the U.S. government, we want to thank all the congressmen that have backed us up. And for the people inside of Iran, we have been a voice for you from day one, and we're here for you till the end.
In Brussels, Paris, and London. People looked forward to leadership change in Iran.
Benham Taleblu is the Senior Iran Program Director at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Good to see you, Benham. Now, leadership change, this one is certain, but how big a change do you actually expect?
Well, this is really the million-dollar question right now, because the Islamic Republic has not just lost its supreme leader, it's lost its commander-in-chief. And yet it still continues to fight. It has a decentralized defense doctrine. It's firing drones. It's firing ballistic missiles. And this should have forced minds even during the 12-day war, because it was a highly dubious claim that an 86-year-old theocrat in a bunker with no electronic communications was administering the day-to-day targeting of the war. So to me, this was a critical move. This was a successful decapitation operation, but really will only stress the next parts of the military operation for America and for Israel, which is in the short to medium term, the defanging operation against the missiles and drones, as well as against potentially moving against the security services or the national security decision-making apparatus. If anything, the death of Khamenei has taught us that you can have a great relief and a great emotional reprieve from the head of the snake being taken out, from the chief theocrat behind the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, but that most unfortunately that individual was buoyed by an apparatus that, unless force is used to take out, will in the short to medium term not mean much.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at a possible pathway towards that end. We have seen in the report just now hopeful celebrations as well as angry protests. What are you hearing from inside Iran? How do people feel about this war?
Well, for the first about 6 to 8 hours of the conflict, depending on how you count, it was quite easy to get messages to and from and out of the country, including video, including text, including picture, and including voice. There has been a significant throttling underway, but one reason the throttling is not felt, or perhaps not as magnified before, is the presence of satellite communications technologies and other secure communications tools to get around the Islamic Republic's digital repression. So largely, again, we've seen happiness, people essentially felicitating the end of the longest-serving dictator in the contemporary Middle East, dancing, singing, gratefulness offered for President Trump. The regime has tried to make this a split screen, however, with a couple of morning ceremonies with regime supporters trying to show mass. But in reality, this split screen does not hold a candle to what we've seen from Iranian society for the past decade, which is that they've been using every single opportunity to try to push past the state in round after round after round of protests. And lest we forget, one common chant in all of those protests was death to Khamenei.
Yair Lapid, the Israeli opposition leader, has called for an Iranian Nelson Mandela to rise to the occasion. Is there anyone you're aware of who could seize this moment of weakness of the regime?
While Nelson Mandela was in jail, it was important to know that the apartheid government of South Africa was nothing. Apples and oranges would be an understatement of the century, was nothing like the government of the Islamic Republic when it came to brutality and repression against its own citizens. Yes, it had apartheid. Yes, it was unjust. Yes, it was unfair, and I'm glad it's overturned. But the violence, and I want to stress the violence, the use of weapons of war at this scale and at this speed against Iranian protesters was not something that we had in South Africa. So when faced with that, I would say it's going to be virtually impossible to have coherent political opposition emerge against the state on the street. What you have with the 92 million Iranian body politic, assumedly 80% of which is anti-regime, is not individual opposition leaders. You have revolutionaries. Political leadership for those revolutionaries is almost certain to come from outside. And to this extent, when Iranians inside the country are going out into the streets facing live bullets, the one name that they are chanting is the name of the exiled crown prince. And neither Washington nor any other Western capital should not be making the perfect the enemy of the good when it comes to helping support him and create a transition to a post-Islamic Republic Iran.
U.S. President Donald Trump talked a great deal about regime change in the beginning, but now he told the New York Times that an outcome akin to that in Venezuela would be ideal in Iran. Is that blueprint applicable here?
Venezuela is not Iran, and Iran is not Venezuela, despite both of them being oil-rich states that were, essentially run into the ground due to poor economic policy and poor decision-making. And given the fact that they're authoritarian and given the fact that they're anti-American, there may have been a desire by some in Washington to see overlap. But this would be, I think, a gross strategic mistake. Iran's society, Iran's state, as well as, more importantly, the military capacities of the Islamic Republic are not at all like Venezuela. Venezuela could not fight back in the way that the Islamic Republic is fighting back now. To the Iranian state, as you saw, did not collapse with the decapitation of its most important political figure. And most importantly, three, society, the operation against Maduro was not back-ended by some of the most mass protests in the history of that country, nor by the most mass repression in the history of that country. And if Washington is somehow able to get past number one and number two, when it comes to society, you won't have peace and stability inside of Iran if you play musical chairs at the top and have an elite division and simply have someone on the periphery of this system whose hands are stained with blood come in and try to steward the ship. The street for a decade has been seeking systemic change. Washington and Jerusalem have a historic opportunity right now to support them. The question is, will they have the wherewithal and resolve to push past the one or two military missions and to move towards a larger political mission and to get a political win in the Middle East finally, rather than just a military win?
There's Benham Taleblu, Senior Iran Program Director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for all those insights today. Take care.
Thank you.